Thank you for joining us for Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. Please send in your questions and join us each week as we explore the history of the city of Mississauga together. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. Well, thank you, David, for your question on how old is Malton. And it's a little bit of a trick question, to be honest. Bear with me as we walk through this. Well, the earliest settlement in Malton began shortly after the new survey of Toronto Township in 1819. The first recorded settler on the ground, if it were, in the Malton area was Samuel Moore in 1823, although there may have been those that predated Samuel. But the name of Malton and the surveyed town site, what we refer to today as Old Malton, did not come about until 1854 or 1855, when the town survey by John Stoughton Dennis in connection with the arrival of the Grand Trunk Railway became a reality. However, Malton was and remained an unincorporated village within the larger geographic entity of Toronto Township. Malton became a police village on January 30th of 1913 and amalgamated into the town of Mississauga in 1968 and the city of Mississauga in 1964. Malton does have a fascinating history of its own, a story unto its own. A number of books, including one by the late Kathleen Hicks on Malton's history, but there are others as well. It's unclear when the name Malton first became associated with the area, however, to get back to kind of your question. The name of Malton came into formal existence with the registration of the town site survey, again by John Stoughton Dennis, on October 5th of 1855. Although the survey itself was conducted in 1854, it wasn't registered until 1855. The name became official with the opening of the post office under Postmaster Isaac Sanderson in 1856, the exact date October 1st of 1856. The town site itself, this is the northwest corner of what is now Dairy Road and Airport Road, was laid out as a railway town in conjunction with the Grand Trunk Railway. The road network from this 1854 survey of Old Malton is largely intact today, running, it parallels the railway line and not the road network. And it's a unique, if relatively unknown, part of Mississauga's history. The street names of the Old Malton town site all derive from place names in Yorkshire, England, as does the name of Malton itself. We do know that the streets were laid out and named as part of the 1854-1855 survey that took place. So in short, if we had to say exactly how old Malton was or to give it a birthday, I would suggest either October 5th of 1855, which is when the survey was registered, or October 1st of 1856 is when the name became official with the opening of the post office. However, there are references a year earlier in 1854 to a Malton agricultural fair that took place. So the name was in some local circulation in use prior to that, but an exact date we're not entirely sure. So given that we can kind of place the name to 1854 to 1856 in that time period, as of 2022, the name of Malton here in Mississauga is between 166 and 168 years old, to the best of our knowledge. However, as we said, the settlement of the area with people on the ground and interacting with each other and the development of community predates all of those things by more than 20 years. So Malton has a history certainly worth celebrating in its own right, although its earliest years are a little bit obscure. So a little bit difficult to say exactly how old Malton itself is, depending on the criteria on which you look at it. But nonetheless, at a minimum, we could say it's between 166 and 168 years old. So again, thank you, David, for your email. And thank you, Nicole, for a question on the origin of Shaw Drive in Port Credit. Shaw Drive is named for James Robinson Shaw, who had a family farm in the area immediately to the east of what is Port Credit now, between Port Credit and Lakeview. James Robinson Shaw, who lived between 1811 and 1907, was born in Westchester, New York, His parents were William Shaw and Anne Robinson, who had immigrated to the United States from England. His family moved to Port Credit in 1816 and were granted 100 acres of land from the Crown, and this is the area where Shaw Drive is today. James Robinson Shaw married Jane Thompson in England, and together they had one son and 6 daughters. The children were William Merritt, Hannah Elizabeth, Emily Jane, Ida Ella, Alice Myrtle, Jessie, and Rosetta Elizabeth. While living on the farm, James hired farmhands to tend to the land and livestock while he worked as a wheelwright and a blacksmith in Port Credit proper. Later, the family also lived on Joseph Street, what is now Mississauga Road South in Port Credit, where they also operated a small general store on the west side of the Credit River. James attended First Methodist Church, First United Church, and was an active member of the congregation. He was also in the community. He was a respected healer, a storyteller, and from all accounts, quite a character. Before Port Credit found their first doctor, James was known for bleeding out illnesses and pulling teeth with medical instruments that he fashioned himself as a blacksmith. So James Robinson Shaw, a beloved local figure during his lifetime, much respected, again, a great storyteller, attending First Methodist Church, later First United Church. The name Shaw Drive is derived from the area of the family farm when they first arrived in this part of Canada in 1816. So there you go, Nicole. The name origin for Shaw Drive, named for the Shaw family and specifically the patriarch James Robinson Shaw, who again lived between 1811 and 1907. And thank you, Tara, for your question on the old green fence. And yes, indeed, we know it well. One of the few remnant landmarks, if you will, of a beloved Port Credit building, which is no longer. The wrought iron fence located in Lions Park. The Lions Park itself was incidentally renamed Harold D. Kennedy Park several years ago after the late city councilor. The wrought iron fence located in the park originally surrounded the Grey House in Port Credit. Now, only a portion of the fence survives. It was much larger in its original orientation. The Grey House stood at the northeast corner of Lakeshore Road and here Ontario Street. St. Lawrence Starch Company, which operated between 1889 and 1989, was co-founded by John Gray, who built the Edwardian brick house known as the Grey House in 1904. His son, John M. Gray, resided in the house until his death in 1965, and the house later served as a restaurant, before it was demolished in 2007. The St. Lawrence Starch Company itself was incorporated in 1889, and it was a corn wet milling factory located at the foot of here Ontario Street in Port Credit. The founding partners were John Gray and Archibald Hutchison, along with Robert and Joseph Kilgore of nearby Toronto. John Gray quickly established himself as one of the preeminent starch production operators in North America, while Archie Hutchison excelled in sales and marketing. The St. Lawrence Starch Company quickly became the largest employer in all of historic Mississauga, and by 1900, more than 100 men and boys worked at the plant. During the Great Depression, president of the company, William T. Gray, initiated innovative programs to avoid layoffs, which culminated in the construction of the factory office in 1932. That building survives today as, again, a beloved landmark on the southeast corner of here Ontario Street in Lakeshore today, known as the St. Lawrence Starch Building. It's the only part of the factory that survives today. The Starch Works were supported, the Starch Works company, the St. Lawrence Starch Company, supported local sporting teams. They were key contributors to the establishment of the Port Credit Arena, music bands, fairs. They provided trophies to local groups and just very much involved in the community today, both the company and the Gray family themselves. The company was perhaps best known for its beehive corn syrup, and there's a name from the past that I'm sure a lot of people will remember with fondness. The St. Lawrence Starch Company ceased operations in 1990, 100 years after the first steep of corn was ground. And you can explore more about the story of the St. Lawrence Starch Company by visiting the interpretive plaques in St. Lawrence Park at the foot of St. Lawrence Drive in Port Credit. There's a series of plaques there that talk about the history of the company. Back to the fence itself, it is the sole reminder of the Grey House, again, which stood across from the company office building at the northeast corner of Huron-Terrace Street and Lakeshore. But a portion of the fence was survived or was salvaged and retained, and then incorporated into a park feature. And there is a small interpretive plaque there that talks about the origins of the fence. It's just kind of a landscape reminder of the past. And this fence itself used to run alongside the Grey House, running up Huron-Terrace Street. So it would have been located on the east side of Huron-Terrace Street from Lakeshore Road North. And again, only a portion was retained for use in the park. And you can see kind of how highly ornamented that fence was. And remembering a landscape of a past era, very much as a kind of a beloved memory in the local community. So thank you, Tara, for your question. And thank you for spending some time with us here at Ask a Historian. Please remember to join us each and every week in sending your questions, and we'll explore the history of the city of Mississauga together. Like, subscribe, and follow, and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. We look forward to seeing you next week here on Ask a Historian.